My name is Marianne Ederson, the Director of Communication in the World Council of Churches. For those journalists present in the main hall in the Ecumenical Centre in Geneva, you have support from my team member Klaus Grue, and you will also be able to ask questions when we open the floor. But first of all, I would like to turn to the panel, and it's a great joy to welcome our moderator, Bishop Dr. Heinrich Bedford-Strom, and our General Secretary, Reverend Dr. Professor Jerry Pillet. And we have asked the two of you to have a brief introduction, and then we open up the floor for questions. And we know that this is the lunch break, and you have to also get some foods. So we will keep it to the point. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I just want to point our attention to how beautiful this occasion is in these times now. 150 people plus advisors and youth advisors, many more people come together in a time where we see a divided world. And these people here, and you might have seen it from the atmosphere from the very beginning, these people come together in a wonderful spirit. With all the different backgrounds, they come together on the basis of their common faith in Jesus Christ. And we believe, and I personally am convinced, that this is exactly what the world needs. People who have completely different backgrounds and experiences in their country coming together at the same time from local communities coming together with this universal horizon. That is what the world needs much more. And that is why I have high expectations into this meeting. And I can give you an example of yesterday's morning prayer. The General Secretary of the Church of Malawi gave the sermon, and he was witnessing the experience of the people in Malawi of two cyclones that have devastated their country, which is a consequence of climate change, obviously. And when we are together on one table with those people that we in our Western countries normally speak about or not speak about when we make decisions that are relevant for their daily life in terms of CO2 emissions and all these other questions. So when I come home, I take the stories of meetings like this, I take them home, and my brothers and sisters are sitting at the table when I speak with politicians or economy leaders, business leaders. And that is what we need much more. We need to make each other visible and make visible what decisions in the powerful countries mean for people who have not caused climate change, but who are the first victims. And that is one example for why the World Council of Churches is so important now. Being rooted in local communities and at the same time having the whole earth in its horizon. And what we also see is a group of people who are in different contexts in the war between in the Russian aggressive war against Ukraine. We want to stay together, but we are together on a clear basis. You are all aware of the statement that the Assembly in Karlsruhe made, condemning the Russian invasion and declaring it as an illegal and immoral war, criticizing, as it was repeated today, the misuse of religious language. That is the basis on which we talk, and we challenge each other. And I am curious. I want to know more of also my Russian brothers and speak with them about it. That is the idea of the Roundtable. We think that the common faith in Jesus Christ makes a difference. That is why we want to try it. I was asked, and I didn't respond to that aspect of the question, whether that did have any chance. My response is, I don't know. I don't know whether this roundtable will be successful, but we must try. We must try if we really are the church, and we must lay the success possibilities in God's hands. But it cannot keep us from trying it, this not knowing whether it will be successful. We must try it in any case. So that is why I'm happy that we have started this initiative. And maybe as a last sentence, it must be clear that when we lead these talks, we are not coming from politics to Christ, but we're coming from Christ to politics. We do it from our faith in Jesus Christ, and then we must draw the conclusions. And we must be free of primary loyalties to our own states, governments, nations, or whatever. Our primary loyalty is Jesus Christ. That is the basis of our roundtable.
Thank you. The moderator has shared information with regards to the spirit of the meeting so far, and as reflected on one or two matters. I just want to really speak about some of the business items that we will be looking at in this particular Central Committee. I think one of the most important things in this meeting is the approval of a strategic plan. The World Council of Churches, after its assembly, puts together another strategic plan for the next 8 years. And we have been working with this quite extensively. And we will be presenting that to the Central Committee in the hope that it would be approved. And the strategic plan has some major elements to it. The strategic plan speaks about what was actually mandated from the Karlsruhe Assembly to continue with a pilgrimage of justice, reconciliation, and unity. And the new strategic plan will be built around that. Some key priority focus will be on issues of justice, of course, issues of unity, because unity is written into the actual purpose of the mission of the WCC, and the vision to see that churches, 352 churches, can actually work together, coming from very different backgrounds, can work together and have unity. And that's what we're starting to see. We've seen that for a while. And I must say that to add to the spirit of this meeting already, we are seeing the same now too. And we thank God for that. The strategic plan will also focus on the areas of our programmatic structures. It will talk about unity, and more specifically, one of the programs that we will be working with is the Nicaea 25 project. 1,700 years of anniversary will be celebrated in 2025, and we are busy working towards that. But we're also wanting to use that significantly as a basis to demonstrate visible unity amongst churches. So we have been in discussions with different churches to ask how they may participate in that process of giving visibility to the world about Christian unity. The great thing about 2025 is that all of our churches, the Western and Eastern churches, will celebrate a common Easter. And we're hoping to use that as a driving point in terms of expressing our visible unity. So there will be conferences taking place, there will be meetings of various kinds taking place, where we will continue to actually labor the point on visible unity as well. And then also, climate change is a big issue for us. The Karlsruhe Assembly made that very clear, and we will be appointing a commission to manage that particular responsibility. Issues of health and healing are important to us. Again, we will be appointing another commission to address that matter. And there are several important areas that we are looking at in terms of the life of the council that we will continue to work with. I don't want to reinforce or to say more than what the moderator has said about the Ukraine situation, but I would just want to say another angle to that. He has very clearly outlined the basis from which we would be involved in this project. Our task is to come to it as people of faith. We don't come as politicians, we come as people of faith, trying to find an alternative path as to how we may find peace and work towards peace. And we are talking about the idea of a roundtable. And in the roundtable, in the initial stages, we will bring primarily the Orthodox communities together, the Ukraine Orthodox Church, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine and the Russian Orthodox Church to the roundtable to discuss how may we as churches work together for peace, firstly amongst ourselves, and then to the bigger global issue of peace, but more specifically in this context in Ukraine. And we are hoping that that conversation will actually help us to be able to chart a way, not only for the Ukraine context, but for world peace, as we look at so many different areas in the world where there are numerous conflicts and divisions and factions. And we want to work more with that as well. So I think that's a little bit of a brief outline of some of the major things that we will be speaking about in this Central Committee, among many other things, of course, but we're just trying to sound out some of the things that will take us more time to discuss. And I think with that, we are open to receiving questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pelé. Then we open the floor for questions, and we will begin with this room, Klaus.
Yes, good afternoon. Jan Herbermann, EPD News Agency, Germany. I'd like to come back on the Russian Orthodox Church, and I'd like to ask you, in your view, how damaging for the unity of the WCC is the continuing support of the ROC for Putin's war of aggression in Ukraine? Secondly, when will you start the roundtable, and where are the venues? Will it be in Geneva or Moscow or the two of them? And thirdly, do you really believe that you might find common ground with the current leadership of the Russian Orthodox Church? Thanks.
Thank you, Jan. Who want to respond? Bishop Heinrich.
We can probably both respond, but let me begin. If we did not have the hope that dialogue can lead to progress, we wouldn't do it. We want to seriously discuss all the questions you rightly have in mind when you ask your question. I don't know the result. I don't know it. But we have a clear statement from Karlsruhe, and we have had some informal talks, of course, that for me result in the expectation that it's not in vain to talk, and that there can be movement in thinking about all these issues. And the General Secretary has had his own experience in Moscow. He will speak about his own expectations, but I think not knowing, I repeat that, not knowing whether that will be successful, whether that movement that you're rightly expecting will happen, cannot keep me from trying it. The success, the result is open. But what I want to emphasize is that we cannot keep just relying only on military logic. We cannot do that. All the organizations and the churches should be in the front row who have contacts to Russia from other countries. They should not end those contacts. They should actually intensify it whenever possible. How else could we break through the wars of propaganda if there weren't any contacts where you can deliver different information than people might get otherwise? So that is one aspect of it. So that is why I think we must try again.
So will the continued relationship with the ROC be damaging for the WCC? My answer would be no. Why? Because the WCC has made it very clear and categorically clear where we stand as far as the war is concerned. And we have communicated the same to the Russian Orthodox Church, that the WCC has made the stand. We have called the war illegal and immoral, and we are calling for the ending of the war. Of course, we cannot stop them from continuing to justify the situation as they have done in the past. But part of the issue of the roundtable is to discuss precisely that. How do you justify a war when we're talking about how we understand the scriptures? And so the intention of the roundtable is to really seriously interrogate those kind of questions. So I do not see it as damaging. The WCC, I think, exercised wisdom, in my opinion, by not suspending the ROC, because had the ROC been suspended, I don't think we, as many other organizations, does not have access to them. The WCC was able to meet with all the different churches. Reason being, they are member churches and we have access to them. And this has also included the ROC. And we are pleased that we were able to actually do that. There are many other churches that have been working with the issues in Ukraine and for peace, but they have not been able to reach out to Moscow. But we have been, because they're member churches here. And so to some people's eyes, it may be damaging because they are impatient. They want something to be dealt with and dealt with immediately. And that can be understood because there's a war going on and we need to stop that. But it is complex. And therefore, in the midst of these complexities, we've got to navigate positions way forward. But to answer your question, for the WCC, it's not damaging at the moment because the WCC is clearly indicating that it is trying. It is trying its best to work with us. When will this take place? We are hoping in October. Where will it take place? We are hoping in Geneva. We're looking for some neutral space where we can actually have this. So Geneva is the place that we are currently suggesting, and there's been support for the venue, because I think most people will like a neutral venue. The only problem that we face is that to get some of the people involved in the conversation may be very difficult, because some of them, for example, from the UOC, will not be able to return to the Ukraine. So those are some of the complications that we're exploring at the moment of how we best may deal with that. So if it needs be that we have to rethink our venue, we will cross that bridge when we get there. But this is where we are at the moment. And yes, we do believe, as the moderators indicated, that what we're doing can make a serious impact. We've already started to see the benefits of what we're doing, not remaining idle on the situation, but entering into the space and saying, as churches, as faith communities, we believe we're called to make a difference. And we will continue with it.
Thank you, Dr. Pelea. We have a follow-up question from a journalist from Romania, Daniela Visan, asking who will be present at the round table and who will decide who will be present.
So obviously we don't want to be prescriptive. We got to give the churches the opportunity to appoint their own delegation. What we have said is that we're looking at an initial start of about 20 people, because you must understand also that this actually will require a lot of funding. And we don't have the funds for it, but we have the dream for it. So we have to work with that possibility. But what we are saying is that we are saying to each church that they should actually appoint 5 people, but we are asking for a list. And we really asking for people who would be helpful to us to be able to navigate a positive way forward. And in that spirit, we will be able to appoint the delegation to the round table. So that conversation is still in progress. We've written to them. We have not told who or whom should be part of that delegation. We're waiting to get responses. And once we get that, then we'll take it further.
Just one small addition. In addition to any considerations in terms of finances, I think it makes sense to keep the first round small, because we have built up trust with our visits, and trust is growing. And I think the success will rely on trust. And if the circle would be too big in the beginning, too many people from outside in it, then this would be in danger. That's why I think it's also another reason why we begin on a small scale with a perspective of expanding it later.
Thank you very much. Then we will turn to Cameroon. We have a journalist from CBS Radio. I turn to Marcelo.
Hello, good afternoon from Cameroon.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
You're more than welcome to ask your question to the panel.
Thank you very much. My name is Gemde Emmanuel, a senior journalist with the CBS Radio of the Presbyterian Church in Cameroon. My question is directed to the bishop, the moderator, Bishop Dr. Henrich. Is in line with finances. He mentioned that the WCC has it as key agenda to bring healing to a broken world, and it needs resources, and it's looking forward to member churches doing their contributions based on their ability. I wish to find out, with this strategy, though you mentioned about the finance committee getting into work, with the strategy of each member church contributing based on their ability, how sure are we that we'll be able to get enough resources for the dream or this vision of bringing healing to a broken world?
Thank you for this question. It's indeed, as I said, a crucial question, how we can get the resources that we need to do the work that we need to do. And I think it's a multi strategy because increasing membership contribution is only one thing. And we have heard the numbers that it's only a limited percentage of churches who are contributing. And I think it makes a big difference if we can make clear how important it is right now and how instrumental the WCC can be just now in this wounded world, that we can maybe raise awareness amongst our member churches. I mean, it's 3.3 million out of a budget of around 20 million that comes from member churches. It's not enough. So that is one part of the strategy, but of course there's a strategy, and we will speak about it with a paper from the finance committee, that there are other ways. Of course, the fundraising, finding private donors must play a big role. And what we already do is getting money from other churches that are not through the member church channel, but program oriented. That is already happening. The General Secretary has pointed to it. So on each of those levels, we need to raise the consciousness of the necessity to also give money if you want to support an organization ideologically. If you are a member, you want to support the organization, and one part of your commitment is money. And some can give more, some can give less, or even nothing material, but we're aware of that. But in general, I think there is, as we say in German, some air upward to the amount of commitment also materially.
If I could just add to that, I mean, of course, you use the word ability of member churches. Not all member churches have the ability to give, and we recognize that. But of course, we will ask member churches that can assist to assist. And I must say that there are already member churches that are volunteering to actually make gifts available for the specific initiative, which we are appreciating. But also there are other organizations that we have to tend to assist us as well. So we would have to go on a fundraising drive beyond our member churches if we have to go on with the project itself. And I think there are many people, obviously, who believe that the situation in Ukraine must end. And therefore, we hope that they will contribute to this project in the hope of their contribution to ending the war. So we have to go to outside sources.
Thank you. Then we will take a final question from the main hall.
Esther Sutter, Switzerland, working for Katholische Nachrichtenagentur. My question goes to you. You said that the churches are not loyal to the government. It's now I say it in a different way. You understand what I mean? How can you imagine being on a round table with a partner or opposite who just does not follow this logic, even goes to the contrary? How can you imagine to speak together that it's not going to be a power game? And the question of when does it get to a confessionalist? It's a Gratwanderung in German.
Thank you. My first response might seem simple, but it has power, and that's prayer. I have had the experience in Karlsruhe with we had discussions, fervent discussions, controversial discussions, where you thought we're not getting anywhere, and maybe this paper will never see the light of the public. And we prayed, and sometimes a person prayed who was in the very minority position, and he or she was asked to pray. And that was very powerful. I had some experiences that really went deeply in my heart, where prayer could bring us back to the primary loyalty, which is Jesus Christ. And the second thing is knowing exactly what the basis of our talks is. I think we would find a common consensus by all partners in this dialogue to say Jesus Christ is our primary loyalty. And then when we realize in certain contributions to the dialogue that that is not the case, that it's basically a national loyalty or government loyalty or something, then let's challenge each other. Let's challenge each other. And then people can explain why what they just said is not based on primary loyalty to a government, but also on their faith of Jesus Christ. And in some cases, I'm quite curious how they would be able to give reasons for that. But that is the nature of dialogue. That's why I want to talk, because I want to have exactly answers on these questions. But it must be clear, that is the basis of our community of fellowship of the World Council of Churches. It's in our rules, it's everywhere. It's a fundamental statement. Jesus Christ is the center, nothing else.
Maybe I could just add to that as well, because in terms of the roundtable, the methodology that we will be using is to also help to open up the scriptures and ask, what does the Bible tell us about peacemaking and so forth? And it is hoped with prayer, which I think is an important ingredient to all of this, that also the study of the scriptures together can change our perspectives. You're absolutely correct. People coming to the roundtable are going to come with their own baggages, their political affiliations and so forth, and you can't be dismissive of that. But how do we sit with each other in the purity of the gospel and try to understand what God calls us to do? So there will be efforts to try and help us understand how we may move forward. There will be principles that we will actually adopt in terms of the agreement of how we would proceed. And there would be certain standards by which we will be working in terms of how we can begin this conversation and then take it further.
Thank you. A final question from me. We have also heard in your reports and that WCC are turning 75, and our birthday is on the 23rd of August. And we are celebrating in St. Pierre Cathedral on Sunday with Bishop Heinrich, who is preaching. But a crucial question, how did you get involved in the ecumenical movement and when? Because normally we can hear that it could be in young age. How was it for you, Bishop Heinrich, and then to Dr. Pille?
Well, I can actually, I have a clear memory of when the ecumenical movement came into my life consciously. I don't exactly know how old I was. I was maybe 14 or something. But in the parish in my father's parish, my father is a minister. And on one Sunday, we had a guest preacher. And that guest preacher's name was Philip Potter. And he was the general secretary of the World Council of Churches. And I still remember, it was so impressive. So maybe you can impress many young people in your period, that I never forgot it. And then later, when I studied theology, ecumenical movement was always in my heart, was always part of my range. So it started very early, but I could have never separated loyalty to Jesus Christ and the horizon of the one world.
Thank you. Then Dr. Pille.
Well, from a very young age, when we're still young, I'm thinking about 8, 9 years of age, my brother, my twin brother, whom some of you probably know, he and I used to be actors at that age. So what we had was different churches heard about us trying to act and things like that, and they would invite us to take part in their plays. And through that, we became very crisscrossed in terms of different church experiences. And a lot of churches would invite us repeatedly to come and be involved. And then as I was growing up, I became the youth leader of my church youth group, and we had about 120 people in the youth group. And all of those people, in fact, the majority of them came from other churches to join us. But those churches, the ministers in those churches often invited me to preach. So I had this contact with them from that age. But my own church also, at an age of 18, sent me for a youth camp in Madagascar. I'll never forget that. And it was an international camp. And there I started to rub shoulders with so many people from different church affiliations. And that's when it really steered me as well, even more concretely. So there's been a progressive growth in terms of working with different churches. And then I was appointed by my church to serve on many ecumenical bodies, the Council for World Mission, the World Communion of Reformed Churches, which I became president of, the World Council of Churches, and then I was also a member of the Central Committee elected in Busan. So ecumenism, as I say, has been part of my DNA. And I've grown in it, and I probably know no different at this stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panel. Thank you very much to all the journalists following from all over the world, including Madagascar. And we say thank you very much to the interpreters, to the WCC communications team, the technical team, and we will meet again, daily press briefings every day, 10:30. And if you need any support, please stay in touch with us. Thank you very much and have a nice day.